Hello my friends, and welcome to the ASMR Time Machine. In this study, we go back to the 12th century. The sun rose over the city of Mainz on the 20th of May, 1184, much as any other day. But nothing about this day would be ordinary. Not only was this the celebration of Pentecost, but this day would mark the beginning of a festival that would be the crowning glory of Western chivalry, the court festival of Mainz, or the Mainzer Hoffest, often referred to as the Diet of Pentecost, hosted in the Holy Roman Empire, part of which is now modern Germany. An imperial diet was a formal and deliberative assembly of princes or estates or provincial legislatures assembled to meet the ruler or emperor. Hence we have the word Hoftag or court day, or Reichstag, imperial day, or imperial diet. Diet, being a derivative of the Latin dies for day. The concilium and auxilium, or counsels and aid sought by the emperor of those princes of the empire whenever there was a consequential decision to be made possible the effective governing of the empire and the land. This would be done often on religious feast days in different cities, there being no imperial seat, and was accompanied by festivities, allowing the nobility to show off their power and affluence. There are very few good accounts of these festivals extant, but the famous one in Mainz in 1184 was of such great interest that there are several accounts surviving. The historian Wilhelm von Giesebrecht wrote that it was the pinnacle of German imperial history and remained unparalleled. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I, known as Barbarossa, or Redbeard, that paragon of German chivalry, had organized the event to be held on the island of Maraue, facing Mainz, where the river Main joins the Rhine. The occasion, the day of Pentecost, would consummate the Hohenstaufen dynasty's power and glory with tournaments, games, banquets, plays, poetry, and numerous pleasures, as well as the knighting of Frederick's two sons. Barbarossa, formerly Frederick, Duke of Swabia, was born in December 1122 and was elected Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire of the German nation in 1152. He ruled until his death in 1190. He was chosen by the prince-electors as heir of Germany's most prominent families in Frankfurt on the 4th of March, 1152, and crowned in Aachen 4 days later. He was crowned King of Italy on the 24th of April, 1155 in Pavia, and then Emperor by Pope Adrian IV in Rome on the 18th of June, 1155, and inspired the word holy to be attached for the first time to Charlemagne's legacy of one Europe in defense of Rome. In 1178, Frederick was formally crowned King of Burgundy at Arles, and during his long campaigns in Lombardy, earned his nickname Barbarossa, or Redbeard. In 1183, Frederick had campaigned in the Italian cities, won some political success, and subdued his one-time ally and then fierce rival, Henry the Lion. To solidify his power, Frederick announced a court day in Mainz for the following year. A city of wooden buildings and tents to house the knights and lords was to be built especially for this court day, in a circular arrangement, and at its centre would be the emperor's palace, a festival hall, and a church. There were also buildings for staff and 2 great chicken coops. Nobles and guests from France, Spain, England, Italy, and the Balkans planned their attendance, and it is said that more than 70 imperial princes came with all of their knights. At this time, the importance of the assembled nobles was determined not yet by their purses, but by the number of followers in their train. Hence the probably overestimated number of attendees being recorded at 70,000. In addition to nobles, princes, clergy, and the general public, the poets Heinrich von Feldecke and Cure de Provence were present. Courtly ceremony, and indeed poetry and stories, came predominantly from France, and many present spoke French as their native tongue. The Saxon Chronicle numbers the knights attending at 40,000, and a list of the greatest princes and dukes along with the size of their contingents survives. Arnold von Lübeck wrote that there was a cornucopia of delicacies to eat and drink that came from many lands, including wine from several regions. The nobles attending were expected to chip in for the cost as much as their purses would allow, as well as bringing their service staff, tents, and other accoutrements to the festival. Arnold von Lübeck writes, "In the year 1184, around Pentecost, Emperor Frederick held a very famous court day in Mainz. There all the dignitaries, officials, and princes gathered. There came all the archbishops, and all the great and noble ones who vied to please the emperor. In the plain near Mainz, between the Rhine and Main rivers, a lightly built but splendid and magnificent city arose to accommodate the princes and nobles, accompanied by their stately retinues. In the center of this artistically created tent city, a richly decorated wooden palace was erected for the emperor himself, and connected to the palace was a mighty church. Around this center, the tents of the individual princes spread out in a wide circle, each set up for themselves. Countless tents, gleaming in various colors, covered the vast plain, their tops adorned with flags and banners. Even more astonishing were the supplies of food brought from all sides by land and water, upstream and downstream, along the Rhine, at the emperor's command. A whole fleet of ships lay along the Rhine banks, having brought inexhaustible quantities of wine from the wine-rich region. The same was true for grain, bread, livestock, and poultry. To give an idea of the indescribable effort, I will mention just one of the lesser things to infer the larger. The 2 large houses were built there, with large rooms fitted with crossbars throughout. These houses were filled from top to bottom with roosters and hens so densely packed that no view could penetrate through them, to the great amazement of many who could hardly believe that so many chickens even existed. Such enormous supplies were indeed necessary, for the masses of princes and nobles, the locals and foreigners, were to be entertained as the emperor's guests for 3 days. And what crowds were expected beyond the invited guests! Traveling singers and poets, entertainers and jugglers were drawn by the festivities from afar, hoping to gain richly from the generosity of the emperor and the princes. The number of knights and warriors was estimated at 70,000, and added to this was the host of clergy and common folk. On the first day of Pentecost, Emperor Frederick, adorned with the imperial diadem, proceeded solemnly with his wife Beatrice, accompanied by a splendid retinue, to the church, erected in the center of the camp. Following them, with the royal crown on his head, was King Henry, Frederick's son. They left the church in equally stately processions after the Mass. Splendid banquets concluded the first day of festivities, where the princes of the empire personally served the emperor as cupbearers, stewards, marshals, and chamberlains. The next day, after the early Mass, splendid nightly games and weapons exercises took place, where the emperor's sons, King Henry and Duke Frederick of Swabia, demonstrated their skill in wielding weapons. About 20,000 knights competed not only in all knightly arts, but also in the splendor of their armor, the brilliance of their weapons, and the beauty of their horses. Emperor Frederick himself appeared among them and participated in their contests. When the splendid spectacle ended, the emperor's sons were ceremonially girded with swords and knighted. To celebrate the joyous event, they distributed gold and silver, horses, and other gifts to the gathered servants, singers, jugglers, and the poor. The events, as we have heard, began on the first day with the Mass of Pentecost, after which the imperial couple and then the princes were ceremonially crowned. The emperor's sword-bearer was the Count of Haguenau, and Frederick's son Henry, the future Emperor Henry VI, attendant and wearing his royal crown. Next, the large banquet took place, with all of Frederick's favoured princes and dukes filling the roles of court officers, with great pageantry. At the imperial table sat the high dukes and princes. The rest of the day was spent in merriment, conversation, and festivity. The following day, day 2, was Whit Monday, was the grand festival day, the accolade of Frederick's sons, Henry and Frederick. Henry was only 18 years old, and Frederick 18 months younger. They were both knighted by their father, the emperor himself, in a grand ceremony of splendor. The sword-girding ceremony was followed by gift-giving, giving to those in need, including knights, prisoners, and crusaders. Princes gave the new knights and minstrels gifts in the form of horses, precious clothes, gold, and silver. In this way, distributing wealth was often seen as a show of power. Largesse was a form of honor. Next came a riding event in which, it was said, 20,000 knights took part in a grand cavalcade with banners and lances. Perhaps the precursor to the Grand Carrousel, types of which took place in Versailles and the Hofburg in Vienna in later years. The emperor himself rode as well, carrying his shield. On the third day, the riding tournaments and games took place, where knights showed their skills. There was also time amidst the festivities for political intrigue and negotiation, of which Arnold of Lübeck writes in his chronicle. A dispute arose between Abbot Conrad of Fulda and the Archbishop of Cologne, about whom ranked more highly in the empire. The emperor asked the Archbishop of Cologne, Philip of Heinsberg, to grant the wish of the Abbot of Fulda. The Archbishop saw this as an attack on his position, as materialized in the seating arrangement. Philip petulantly then asked to leave the festivities, refusing to consent to his ritual reduction of rank. The testiness spread as numerous vassals of the archbishop, including the emperor's own brother, the Count Palatine, also requested to withdraw from the festivities. Arnold writes that it was then that the emperor's son Henry fell to the archbishop's feet, pleading, "I beg you, dearest father, stay here and do not turn our joy into mourning." Philip was then allowed to take the place on the emperor's left, and the abbot of Fulda took a lower seat. Imperial matters were also dealt. Henry the Lion had come from his exile in Normandy for negotiation. Unfortunately, this accomplished little. Ambassadors from the Count of Flanders were also there for negotiations with the emperor. The main political event was a treaty between Baldwin V of Haguenau and Frederick, providing for the conversion of the Namur Luxembourg into an imperial fiefdom, and the elevation of the Counts of Haguenau to the status of imperial prince. Through these days, riding, tournaments, games, festivities, and conference abounded. But it was not to last. A summer storm came down from the Alps, causing several tents and the wooden church to collapse. There were injuries in the crowded venue, as well as a few casualties. With this, the monumental celebration came to a close. The splendor of the court festival of Mainz was to be acclaimed in chronicles and poetry, a pageant and show of imperial strength and magnificence such as had never before been seen in that age. Less than 10 years later, Frederick embarked on the Third Crusade, travelling overland through the Carpathians, and, before reaching his goal, drowning, attempting to swim across the Salif River in modern-day Turkey. Frederick Barbarossa is considered to be among the Holy Roman Empire's greatest medieval emperors, reaching almost legendary status in his lifetime. His longevity, his ambition, his extraordinary skills at organization, his battlefield acumen, and his political perspicacity were unequaled. His contributions to European society and culture were far-reaching and include the re-establishment of the civil rule of law, which counterbalanced papal power and brought stability to the German states that had long endured dissension with the popes. Such was the charisma attached to Frederick Barbarossa that a legend was born which pictured the emperor asleep in the depths of the Kyffhäuser Mountains in Thuringia, waiting for the day of his return to lead his people to unity and renewed glory. Sleep well, my friend, and enjoy the ASMR Time Machine.